When you've lived with somebody for over 30 years, as Peter and I both, it turns out, have done with our respective partners, you know whether you want to live with somebody any longer or not. It's not really, I think, in many situations, one person's fault or another person's fault, and even if it is, why do you want to hang that laundry out in public?
The only way that I could get a divorce in a fairly short space of time was by going down the road of unreasonable behaviour. And when you do that, you've got to come up with reasons for the unreasonable behaviour. You've got to convince the court. I was just starting the process, and all of a sudden, my wife served papers on me because she wanted to have control of the proceedings.
What did you make of that?
Well, it was, actually, it was another massive surprise.
Were there things that you had to say about your wife, or that your wife had to say about you, which were untrue?
Yeah, oh, totally. And this is really why the law needs to be changed. She said I was controlling and had said, you couldn't wear this, couldn't wear that. That's not true at all. The solicitor had to exaggerate and just give the negatives. It hurts.
So, Carol, but back to you. You want to tell us what happened then?
I didn't want to rake up all past incidents. And the problem is that a lot of these incidents on their own don't really mean anything. It's 30 years worth. So I just made really, really general terms about lack of emotion and moral support. And, well, of course, the judge threw it out because I wasn't specific enough.
Was it ever an option to go for a completely outrageous lie? You hear of stories in the 50s and 60s where people would book a room and pretend to have an affair. And
you don't have to even book a room. What happened in the end was that neither of us could move out of the family home. We were still having to live together, and he started internet dating underneath my nose, going out with his overnight bag in front of me. So in the end, I didn't have to lie. And I re-petitioned on grounds of adultery.
That sorted things.
Yes, but it shouldn't, should it? People think that divorce should be difficult because people shouldn't enter into marriage lightly. And to me, marriage should be more difficult. My divorce cost me over £60,000 and took 3.5 years. That's not right, is it?
There's been mention of the 4 reasons that in England and Wales you can have divorce. One of those is separation, and if you both agree, 2 years.
There's 2 years. It's so long, Luke. If you've agreed to be apart, 2 years is a very long time before you can get your life back on track. And if you're an older person, your life's dribbling away.
That was Luke Jones talking to Peter and Carol, and you can hear their full discussion on the IPM podcast. bbc.co.uk/IPM is just one way to find it. Listening to that here in the studio with me is Jessica Lee, a family law barrister who was a Conservative MP from 2010 to 2015. And given your experience in family law, do you think it is the case, as David Gauke says, that there's an intellectual dishonesty to the requirement for blame to be attributed to one side?
I do agree with that. And the reason is this. In our society, judges have to make decisions day in, day out on factual matters. What's true, what's happened, what isn't. Currently, judges day in and day out are having to read petitions which say X has happened or Y has happened, and the other party saying, well, I don't actually agree with that, but I won't stand in the way of this divorce. That has to be intellectually dishonest for judges to have to do that day in and day out.
But is there a risk in making divorce too easy? There will be some people unhappy with this idea that there isn't enough thinking time, enough time for reconciliation and for counselling.
Well, I'm sure all those points will be considered in the consultation, but I think what is important here is that if as a society and a government we value the institution of marriage, actually what we do at the moment, we're undermining that by having a system, a process in place that isn't working. The current system with this fault element is not achieving what it should do for people. We can't, when people have these decisions, as Clive set out, about divisions, about finances, arrangements for children on divorce, to then have to go to this process that Peter and Carol very clearly set out, of having to then apportion blame, point the finger on facts and things that have happened, that has to in fact undermine our system of marriage, not make it better. So let's take this opportunity to make it better.
We heard there are 61,000 fault-based divorces every year, and there has been many a year of call for change and reform. Why do you think the moment has come?
I think there's never one reason, one factor for why an issue reaches the appropriate time, but we do have the stage very firmly set now for that process to take place. I think it's been a combination of reasons. I think there's been an active movement in terms of the family law environment. There have been putting forward some very constructive messages the last few years. Currently, Baroness Butler-Sloss, she's laid a bill in the House of Lords. The stage is very firmly set, and I do think with the Owens case in coming to the fore and with the hearing that we've recently had, I think that's raised it nationally, and I think into many households up and down the country, and I imagine at least it's now become a topic of discussion. So I do hope, and certainly I would